In the late 1800s, a single winter storm arrived without a name, without a warning, and without an enemy. Yet it claimed more American lives than the Spanish-American War, the War of 1812, and the Revolutionary War combined. It wasn't a battle fought on foreign soil. It was a battle against nature, waged in America's own backyard. And it happened so suddenly, with such ferocity, that it paralyzed an entire nation. Despite its staggering death toll and the way it reshaped the country, most Americans today have never even heard of it. This isn't just a story about a storm. This is the story of the forgotten blizzard that changed America forever. Imagine a world without weather forecasts. No app on your phone, no meteorologist on the evening news, no Doppler radar. In the 19th century, that was reality. America was a nation expanding rapidly, confident in its industry and progress, but utterly vulnerable to the whims of nature. There were no satellites to track storms brewing over the horizon, no sophisticated models to predict their path, and certainly no emergency alerts pushed to your phone. For the average person, the only way to judge the weather was to look outside. If the sky was clear, the day was safe. This simple, innocent trust in a clear blue sky would soon prove to be a fatal mistake for thousands. People planned their days, sent their children to school, and traveled long distances, all based on the weather they could see in that moment. They had no idea that a monster was gathering strength, ready to descend upon them with blinding speed and unimaginable power. Life was lived one day at a time, completely unprepared for the extreme, violent weather that was an ever-present silent threat. The day began like any other, deceptively mild, almost spring-like in some areas. The sun was out, and the air was calm. Children, bundled up in their usual winter coats, walked to one-room schoolhouses across the prairie. Farmers went out to tend to their livestock. Workers headed to their jobs in the bustling cities of the East Coast. And trains, the lifeblood of the nation, ran on schedule, chugging along miles of exposed track. There was absolutely no indication that this day would be any different from the last. But then it happened. The temperature didn't just drop. It collapsed. In a matter of hours, a gentle day plummeted into a deep Arctic freeze. The sky turned from blue to a menacing dark gray, and then to white. A wall of snow, driven by hurricane-force winds, swept across the landscape. It moved faster than a horse could gallop, faster than any message could be sent. It overwhelmed entire regions before anyone even knew what was happening. The storm didn't just arrive. It ambushed an entire nation. The intricate web of 19th century life was torn apart in hours. Railroads, the marvel of the age, were the first to fall. Trains loaded with passengers and goods were frozen in their tracks, buried in massive snowdrifts that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Locomotives that had been symbols of power and progress became helpless metal tombs. Telegraph lines, the era's internet, snapped under the weight of ice and the force of the wind. One by one, cities went silent. News couldn't get out, and help couldn't be called for. Entire towns were completely cut off from the rest of the world, isolated islands in a sea of white. People were trapped wherever they had been when the storm hit, in their homes, in schools, at their workplaces. With no way to communicate, a journey of just a few hundred yards to get home became an impossible, life-threatening expedition. The world shrank to the size of a single snow-battered room, and for many, the silence was the most terrifying part of all. So, why was this storm so deadly? It wasn't just the amount of snow, though in many places it was record-breaking. It was the lethal combination of three distinct factors. First, the extreme cold. Temperatures plunged to dozens of degrees below zero. A cold so intense it could be fatal in minutes to anyone not properly sheltered. Second, the wind. These weren't just strong gusts. They were sustained, hurricane-force winds that created a deafening roar and turned simple snowflakes into icy projectiles. And third, The combination of snow and wind created complete and total whiteout conditions. Visibility dropped to zero. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, let alone the path back to your own front door. People tragically underestimated the storm's power, thinking they could make a short dash from a barn to the house, or from their office to a nearby hotel. They stepped out into the blizzard. Disoriented in seconds, they wandered off paths, collapsed from exhaustion and cold, and many were never seen alive again. The blizzard didn't just hit rural areas. It paralyzed the nation's most powerful cities. New York City, the financial and cultural heart of America, was brought to its knees. Wall Street shut down. The city's elevated trains were stranded, trapping thousands of commuters. Food and coal deliveries stopped completely, leaving millions to face the freezing cold with dwindling supplies. Emergency services, reliant on horse-drawn sleighs, were overwhelmed and often couldn't reach those in need. Commerce across the entire eastern seaboard ground to a halt. The storm had effectively severed the nation's economic arteries. The death toll climbed steadily, day after day, as bodies were discovered in the snow. The final count was staggering, in the thousands, a number that surpassed the casualties of many of America's military conflicts. The country, so used to news of industrial triumphs and westward expansion, was stunned into silence. A simple act of nature had done what no foreign enemy could. It had paralyzed the United States of America. In the aftermath, as the snow melted and the true scale of the devastation became clear, America was forced to confront its own vulnerability. This disaster was a brutal wake-up call, and it led to massive fundamental changes that still protect us today. Cities like New York and Boston realized the danger of overhead power and telegraph lines and began the enormous, expensive project of burying their electrical grids underground. A federal government, recognizing the critical need for advanced warning, significantly expanded and funded a national weather service, laying the groundwork for modern forecasting. The chaos of the response highlighted a complete lack of coordination, sparking the development of formal municipal emergency management and response plans. America had learned a hard lesson. Nature could be just as formidable an adversary as any army, and preparation wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity for survival. The blizzard forced the nation to innovate, not for profit or for power, but for the simple, essential task of keeping its citizens safe. So why isn't this monumental event, this storm that killed thousands and reshaped modern life, a staple in our history books? Why isn't it taught in every American classroom? The answer may lie in the nature of the story itself. The blizzard left no enemy to demonize, no villain to blame. There was no battlefield, no thrilling cavalry charge, no declaration of victory. It was a quiet, cold, and anonymous killer. Its heroes weren't generals, but ordinary people who survived, and the lessons it taught were practical, not ideological. History tends to remember the explosions, the wars, the revolutions, the assassinations. It often forgets the freezes, the quiet disasters that fundamentally alter the fabric of society without a single gunshot. But the legacy of this storm is all around us, in the power lines beneath our feet and the weather alerts on our screens. One storm, one forgotten chapter of American history. It's a powerful reminder that the most significant moments in our past aren't always the loudest. Sometimes history doesn't explode. It freezes, and the lessons learned in the silence that follows can be the ones that echo the longest. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of forgotten history as fascinating as I did, consider subscribing for more stories that shaped our world.